The CCP has turned on foreign capital, don't leave, or you'll be investigated. The dagger is finally drawn. Here is Jersey's news commentary channel. The document that has just emerged is by no means an ordinary policy text. It is, in reality, a signal from Beijing to foreign capital, foreign companies, and global investors that the knives are coming out. On April 7, 2026, China's State Council released the regulations on the security of industrial and supply chains, signed by Li Qiang and effective immediately upon publication. On the surface, it is wrapped in grandiose language about safeguarding industrial and supply chain security, even decorated with facade slogans such as advancing high-level opening up and promoting the stable and smooth flow of global industrial and supply chains. But behind those polished slogans lies a gleaming blade. Article 2 is extremely blunt. If a foreign organization or individual interrupts normal transactions, adopts discriminatory measures, or engages in other acts that are deemed to have caused substantial harm or a substantial threat of harm to China's industrial and supply chain security, they may be placed under investigation. Article 2 goes even further. It directly requires all organizations and individuals within China to comply with measures taken by relevant authorities. Otherwise, they may face restrictions in government procurement, bidding in tenders, imports and exports, international trade in services, cross-border data transfers, and even exit entry, residence, and stay permits. What does this mean? It means Beijing no longer even cares to maintain the official rhetoric it was just shouting about welcoming foreign investment and allowing businesses to develop with peace of mind. It is now moving to place whether foreign firms relocate, whether they halt supply, and whether they adjust their supply chains directly into the scope of national security and administrative punishment. In the past, it still tried to keep up appearances. It still pretended to talk about market rules, still draped itself in the thin veil of rule of law and business environment. Now it cannot even be bothered with that veil anymore. It has simply pulled out the knife. So I say this document is both stupid and vicious. It is stupid because it is profoundly short-sighted. If Beijing comes out this nakedly aggressive, does it really think foreign firms are fools? Of course they understand that if the CCP can investigate them today under the banner of supply chain security, tomorrow it can threaten them again under data security, national security, or countermeasures. Once that happens, who would still dare keep their most critical production capacity, data, management teams, and profits in China? It is vicious because the CCP has now openly flipped the table. On March 22, Li Qiang was still speaking at the China Development Forum, telling global business leaders that China would fully implement national treatment for foreign invested enterprises and allow companies from all countries to develop with peace of mind and achieve great ambitions in China. Before the echo of those words had even faded, on April 7 the State Council decree packed with threats was rolled out. One moment it tells you to feel secure, the next moment it places you under the category of investigable targets. One moment it welcomes investment, the next it turns leaving the supply chain, stopping transactions, and collecting supply chain information into high-risk activities. What credibility does such a regime still have? This is not mere policy inconsistency. This is open deception, open gangsterism. More importantly, what this regulation truly targets is not merely confrontation between governments. It is aimed far more directly at companies' own market choices. European business circles have already seen this clearly. These rules can cover commercial decisions such as stopping supplies to Chinese customers or exiting supply chains related to China, and Beijing does not even need to prove malicious intent. As long as you make such a move, if Beijing believes it threatens its supply chain security, it can move against you and it will. That is why the European Union Chamber of Commerce has warned that these vague provisions will expose companies to greater risks and may even create legal conflicts with the EU's own supply chain due diligence obligations. What is this called? This is the classic tactic of shutting the gate and beating the dog. Many business people in Europe and America may find this shocking. But if you understand Chinese society, especially the history of how local governments have lured in investment, you would not be surprised at all. Because these tactics are nothing new in China. In many parts of China, especially in some central and western provinces, local governments treat investors like honored guests during the zhaoshang phase. But once the project lands, they change their face immediately. Promises are not fulfilled, infrastructure is incomplete, payments are delayed, policies are altered, administrative harassment begins, and the courts tilt against you. In the end, private businesses and outside investors are squeezed dry. People in China have a saying for this: throwing a meat bun to a dog once gone, it never comes back. So it is not that entrepreneurs are naturally pessimistic. It is that they have suffered too many losses and been deceived too many times. That is why the most shameless part of this State Council decree is that it has, for the first time, institutionalized the long-standing local government tactic of shutting the gate and beating the dog at the national regulatory level, aimed at foreign firms, multinationals, and global capital in a semi-public manner. In the past, local governments did this. Now the central government is writing the rules. In the past, it was gray zone manipulation. Now it has been elevated directly into a national security weapon. In the past, when something went wrong, entrepreneurs simply had to accept their losses. Now even exit, relocation, supply suspension, and information gathering themselves are treated as problems to be investigated and punished. This is exactly what it means when the map runs out and the dagger appears. Why is Beijing doing this? At the end of the day, it is because the economy is already collapsing. Foreign capital, foreign companies, orders, tax revenue, employment, foreign exchange, it cannot afford to lose any of them. The AmCham China Toning Hardo survey has already shown that U.S. China tensions, risk management concerns, and tariff pressures remain the main drivers pushing companies to consider relocating production capacity. In other words, companies were already hedging their risks. The more this happens, the more Beijing fears foreign companies leaving, fears supply chains loosening, and fears the relocation trend becoming an unstoppable route. So instead of restoring institutional credibility, protecting property rights, rebuilding rule of law expectations, or reducing political intervention, it has chosen the most instinctive and most gangster-like method of all, intimidation. But this is exactly the problem. Intimidation may buy some time, but it will never buy trust. The CCP may temporarily stop some firms from moving, but it cannot stop them from reassessing China risk. It may force some firms to appear motionless on the surface, but internally it will only accelerate their China 加1 and China 加N strategies. It may use administrative power to retain part of the production base, but it cannot retain genuine long-term capital, long-term credibility, or long-term commitments. In fact, many companies may simply choose to shut down altogether. If you will not let me leave, then I may as well close the business completely. A government that even suspects, investigates, and intimidates companies for the normal right to adjust supply chains has already lost the most basic respect for the market. A regime that shouts openness while politicizing, weaponizing, and criminalizing normal commercial behavior is effectively declaring this 所谓开放，不过是能为我所用时的一件道具。一旦你想走，我就翻脸，拦住你，不让你走。So-called openness is merely a prop to be used when it serves me. The moment you want to leave, I turn hostile, block the door, and stop you. At its core, this document does not show Beijing growing stronger. It shows Beijing growing more panicked, and already flailing in panic. It does not show a more mature system. It shows a more anxious regime. It does not show a safer business environment. It shows the CCP finally exposing its gangster face to the world. In my view, this brazen and reckless gangster behavior has objectively given Western companies, especially many European entrepreneurs, a vivid lesson in what might be called a Liangshan-style highway robbery class. Frankly speaking, many Western, especially European, business leaders have long grown up in normal rule of law environments. They are almost naively innocent, having never really dealt with gangsters and rogues. They do not understand what the old Chinese saying means, the weasel pays New Year's greetings to the chicken a visit with evil intent. Nor do they understand what shutting the gate and beating the dog really looks like. Now, at last, they are beginning to learn. For foreign companies, the message of this document is very simple in today's China. Whether you leave is no longer merely a business judgment. Whether you stay is no longer merely a market choice. Your supply chain, your customer structure, your compliance moves, your due diligence audits, any of these can be stuffed into the CCP's national security pocket at any time. This is what it means when the dagger is finally revealed. This is shutting the gate and beating the dog. And this is the CCP's most shameless, most gangster-like tactic of all.